Alice and I recently had the opportunity to interview Greg Todd, who was a pilot in the Rhodesian Air Force for the duration of the war. Greg has in his possession an original recording of the Green Leader raid, which he participated in. In fact, he was flying next to Chris Dixon, who led the raid, who was Green Leader. Unfortunately, Chris Dixon is no longer with us. But thankfully, Greg is still with us, and he gave me some wonderful photographs. And by way of an introduction to this interview, I decided to publish the voice recording of the Green Leader raid, which many of you have probably heard before, although the only versions I've heard have been very heavily edited. So what I give you here is actually the full and reasonably unedited version. I've only edited out the silences and those transmissions that were unintelligible. So just to introduce this recording, I'd like to just give a little bit of background. For those of us who are Rhodesians, this was a very emotional time. I can remember it was almost a watershed moment, very similar to, I suppose, if you were a New Yorker living in New York on September the 11th, that kind of, it was that sort of feeling that it created a huge amount of emotion and anger, etc. What I'm talking about is the shooting down of Air Rhodesia Flight 825, which was a scheduled passenger flight that was shot down by the Zimbabwe People's Revolutionary Army, or ZIPRA, on the 3rd of September 1978. It was a Vickers Viscount named the Hanyani, and it was flying from Victoria Falls to Salisbury via the resort town of Kariba. I believe there were 52 passengers on board, all of them civilians, and 4 crew members, which includes 2 hostesses. 38 died in the crash. When the plane came down, the pilot, I believe, very skillfully managed to belly land into a field of cotton, but not realizing that there was a ditch in the middle of the field which caused the plane to cartwheel and break up and burn. Of those passengers who survived, many were seriously injured. 10 of them remained with the aircraft, while 5 of them went off to look for water, and 3 of them hid in the bush when another group of guerrillas arrived, rounded up the passengers and massacred them. I can remember the tremendous feeling of emotion and anger which arose from this incident. Following the attack, Joshua Nkomo, the leader of ZIPRA, claimed responsibility for the attack when he was interviewed by the BBC, and I remember him even laughing about it, although he denied killing any civilians. And there was an uprising of emotion from the Rhodesian people, and as Greg says in his interview, our nation's morale took a real hit, and really in response to that horrific event, several things happened. One was Ian Smith immediately broke off his talks with Joshua Nkomo, and Smith himself called Nkomo a monster. The military planned some retaliatory raids, the first one being Operation Snoopy, which I won't go into now, and the second one being Operation Gatling. Operation Gatling was launched on the 19th of October 1978 and was a joint force operation between the Air Force and the Army, which contributed the Rhodesian Special Air Service Regiment and the Rhodesian Light Infantry paratroopers. Their primary target was just 16 kilometers or 10 miles northeast of Lusaka, in what was formerly white-owned Westlands Farm, which had been transformed into ZIPRA's main headquarters and a training base under the name of Freedom Camp. ZIPRA presumed that Rhodesia would never dare to attack a site so close to Lusaka, and about 4,000 guerrillas underwent training at Freedom Camp with senior ZIPRA staff on site. There were other targets as well. Chikumbi, 19 kilometers or 12 miles north of Lusaka, and Makushi Camp. All three were to be attacked more or less simultaneously in a coordinated sweep across Zambia. Squadron leader Chris Dixon, who identified himself to Lusaka Airport Tower as Green Leader, led the raid. The Air Force flew in at very low altitude, thereby avoiding Zambian radar, and took control of the country's airspace for about a quarter of an hour during the initial assault on Westlands Farm. And so I'm going to leave it off there. If you want in-depth insight into this whole incident and the what followed, I suggest reading Ian Pringle's excellent book on the subject entitled Green Leader, Operation Gatling. In this first video, we have the Green Leader raid recording, and in the next follow-up video, we will have the interview that Hannes did with Greg Todd. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Yeah, the tower. I'll just listen up from it. Very good. Thanks. I can switch it off here. Gives too much noise. About how long for the descent? Before the descent? Start descending from this road. Just trying to get us definitely on that bloody thing. Okay. We'll go slightly starboard. Let's start descending, sir. Okay, do you want to maintain the same, or do you want me to reduce to 250? No, maintain the same speed. We'll have to increase it to maintain 300. Okay. Green descending. Right, John. Shall I take another 5-10 knots? Yes, sir. Roger, 270. Roger, 1019 is set now. 450 feet. 4,500 rather. 280 knots, 310 knots and 280 degrees. Go to the left. Roger, go. Left off the right. 005. 005. Yeah. I can see flags. Over it. Watch the wires. Come is unreal. Go left another 2 degrees. Red 2, just tighten it up a bit now. Go left 2 degrees. 001. Okay, we're coming up to 1 minute out. We're on track and we're on time. Put your speed up 20 knots. 15 knots. Blue, your level. Roger, we're at 1,600 feet. Let's go down low, crossing the river, sir. Let's have 290 knots coming up. No. Jump up to the top. Roger, we're coming up to the stream now. To make your heading 320 now. 320. Correction, no. Steady, sorry. 006. 006. Right, looking at the next heading. 006 we've got. Go low down, yeah? Yeah. There's fucking... Roger, we're crossing the stream now. Clear. Well done, JR. Your blue set well into low level now. Turning left now. On to? 304. 304. You have to climb a bit. Yeah. Come on, get round there, you can. One bird, 304, rolling out now. How's the speed? We're holding about 290. That's fine. Let's check on these rivers. Go left, about 2 degrees. 302, Roger. Yeah, but starboard of track. It was possibly that turn. We didn't get round as fast as I'd wanted. Speed is, timing looks okay. Yeah, speed back 15 knots. On track, on time. Dead right. These hunters with this bloody golf bomb here or something, it's all painted bloody red. Take 2 degrees left. Roger, that makes us 300. I thought we'd gone back to 304. Still 302. Alright, 302 back here. No, I was on 302. Oh, shit, I hope these fucking wings don't fall off. So what's your speed? Yeah, it's 275, which is the 15 you wanted of. You want me to get down? Yeah, you can go down a bit. Okay, we're on track on time, yeah. Dead right. About a minute and a half before the hunters leave us. Take 2 starboard. 2 starboard, 304. Make it 305. 305, okay. Yeah. Make it 306. 306, okay, you got it. There's not a peep out of tower, so that's going to be superb. We won't have to talk to him. Yeah, the hunters will be going in about 50 seconds. Okay. Go right another 2 degrees. Yeah, that's another spoon. 308. Yeah. 446, reading you back, right? That's bloody tower. Okay, just stand by, sir. We're coming up to Roger.
I think we've passed it, sir. I think that rise on our right is the one beam our turning point.
Shut up, man.
Okay.
Go.
Tell them to go.
Blue section, go. Blue section, go.
Blue 78. Okay, we're spot on time there.
Okay, shut up.
Bring our speed back 5 knots.
Roger, 270 knots, you've got it now.
Shit, they're not accelerating that bloody quickly. 71. Okay, the next heading is 281, sir.
281, Roger.
And I'll give you doors. Put the switch on at the same time.
Yes, will do.
I think it was somebody in that other frequency, in fact, Tower frequency coming through saying they've
I've switched it off, I think, at that stage. No, I don't think so, Mike. It was a bloody turning point bloody thing.
Okay, we're coming up in 30 seconds to turn, sir.
Roger. Still steering.
The river on our left, yeah. We should see the bridge fairly shortly.
Blue check switches.
Yeah, there's a road. And you can start turning.
Turning now.
Yeah, sir.
281.
No, we just missed it. Bridge is just on the left, confirm.
Yes, there's a bridge just on the left.
Put it round tighter then. Okay.
We passed 281, so I turn back onto it
yes,
now.
Down to 281.
Civil light Thomas. That's 281 we've got.
Back to, bring your speed back.
Negative.
240.
Roger.
Slightly north of our track. Just steer 281.
Steering 281.
Your left 280.
240 knots.
Okay, everything is set up. I'm not reading.
Roger. Have you got us?
Not on the fields, no.
Okay. Here's a school command. Roger, and I'll have 310 knots about, and 280 and 4,500 QNH 1019. Fine. There's nothing from tower. I'm not going to call them, okay?
Okay.
That's going to be perfect.
Oh, little dam coming up. Drifting port. Goes right. 283. 284. Go right some more, just I want to get a spot
284 or 285.
I want to do a king, sir, to get a spot on. Let's go right.
Tell me when to roll out.
Okay, go left 282 now.
285.
282.
282. Power lines down here.
Roger, dear. We're coming up to about 2 minutes. Mark, which ties up? I've got a map reading.
282.
Yeah, I've got 2 minutes to run.
Perfect.
Let's go left a bit. Okay, steady.
That's 278.
Okay, right, 282 now.
282.
Sports wheel coming up. Coming up to our acceleration point. 282 the heading.
282 is the heading.
Okay, we should start accelerating now.
Roger, shall I go?
Let's just leave in case they're going to be a bit late.
Okay.
To the minute.
The leader's turning
out. Accelerate.
Screens accelerating. Roger.
And once we get there, put your doors open.
Yeah, as soon as I've got my speed.
Okay, go left a bit. Go left.
More?
No. Okay, go back now. Onto 282 quickly.
Put them. Roger, heighten speeds, okay.
Roger, I've got the target.
Oh, beautiful, yes. Speed up or is it okay?
Speed's fine. So go left. Steady. Heading.
278.
Roger, steady. Steady. Left the touch.
Beautiful, Johnny.
Steady. Steady. Left the touch. Steady. 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 Confirm switching doors open.
Yes, switching doors.
Steady. Right to touch. I've got them in the field. Steady. I'm going to get them.
Yes.
Steady.
Fucking beautiful.
Steady. Steady. Now. Bomb's gone. They're running.
Beautiful. Jesus Christ, you want to see all those fuckers? The fucking bombs are beautiful. What the fuck is Greg Todd doing?
Roger, we're straight through them. Go down low level.
Roger. Fucking beautiful. Roger, I'm just going to continue on this thing.
Oh, they're running straight into the other frags.
Yeah, I know.
Beautiful.
Roger, let me just get onto fucking town and give them a bloody message. Where's this fucking piece of speech?
I think it'll be better when we've climbed up, sir.
Yes, I will do. I'm just trying to get the thing ready. That was my shame. Let's get up. 20 for 2 to get through there.
Well, that worked out better than it could have. They run straight into the frags.
Check cars are putting up. Fucking magnificent.
Turn left, sir.
Roger. What did you stop at?
Just tell them gang left.
2 out, Visual? Yeah. Gang left. Heading, Mike?
It's half, sir.
Okay.
Look out for aircraft, sir.
Who's that, Visual? Any buggers, this height is mad. There's the bloody city there. So there's people running on the left to stop the Visual?
Are we putting K-cars here?
Eh?
Are they K-cars?
Yeah, they've got K-cars in there. They'll have a beautiful time. They're like fucking ants running around there, huh?
Jesus, that was a swarm of them.
Shit. Yeah, it was a fucking enormous thing.
Jesus, that stuff the tape recorder.
What's that?
What's your left go?
It doesn't matter.
Straight ahead for 1 more minute.
Okay. Keep an eye out for those
wires, sir.
Yeah, I was going to say, for big pylons.
Dolphin 3, do you read?
So we're crossing the road.
Okay.
A3 leaving for stoppage.
Climb.
Yeah.
He's leaving. A3 for stoppage.
Roger.
Okay, we back.
Roger, I'm on town now. I'll give them a shout.
Dolphin 3, 1, 2. Go ahead. You got a message on the relay? A1's leaving stoppage.
Before you do that, turn left, sir.
Turn left onto? Let me get the bloody heading here. 132. Okay. Just check that tape recorder while you're there. If you've got the time, otherwise leave it. Still turning. Roger. Okay, let me try and get the speed up. Lusaka Tower, this is Green Leader. How do you read? Put it up. Lusaka Tower, this is Green Leader.
Then going Tower.
Tower, this is Green Leader. This is a message for the station commander at Mumbai from the Rhodesian Air Force. We are attacking the terrorist base at Westlands Farm at this time. This attack is against Rhodesian dissidents. Roger, thanks. Cheers. Jesus, you should have seen the bombs raining down from the other aircraft here. Fucking dreadful.
K2, confirm you're still going for the buildings. Okay, see those people running on the plot down there, Humphrey? Yeah, okay. You're transmitting.
I hope those K-cars get those buggers. I was so tempted to drop short, into all of them.
Yeah. Right. But the other ones were going on to them.
Yeah.
Because they were running that way.
Rhodesian Air Force 1181.
Shall I answer them?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Chief, stop it.
Can you confirm we can let our civil aircraft take off from here? You have no objection?
Roger, we have no objection there, but I advise you for the moment to stand by on that. I request that you hang on for about a short while, half an hour or so.
I suppose, can you please keep listening watch on this as well, so that we ask you what you want to ask?
Roger, you will do.
What will I call you?
Green Leader.
Green Leader, Roger.
Thanks.
Roger, I'm clearing down towards the southeast at this time. Just follow me down on descending lane level. We just using the rest of my ammo. K4, K1.
Roger, we've still got a stoppage. I think we won't be able to sort it out.
Roger, fine. I've disappeared down towards the southeastern corner of the camp and I'm setting course back now.
That couldn't have worked out better. They ran straight into the bombs. Couldn't believe it, you know.
Yeah.
K4, confirm you've been to the area?
Roger, I'm in the southern side of the orbit, descending about to leave.
All right, I'm leaving now then.
I've got your visual.
K1, Brilliant.
Okay.
How does that look?
Beautiful, John. You're clear straight in now. K2, K1, and K3 and 4 copy visual. K2,
1,000 feet to go, and I've kept the speed up the whole way.
Okay, lead, this is White Lead. Have you finished?
Affirmative, you're clear in.
Roger, what would you like us to take out?
Roger, I think that building that you were going for has been taken out completely, but you might like to have a re-go back on it just to make absolutely certain.
Roger. White 2 lead. Go. Roger, so would you like to watch my strikes and then do restrike after me? Roger, will do. Roger, so I think if you can take out the Radio Shack down there, do you know which one it is? Affirmative. Roger, so if you'll take out that one and I'll put my friends on the headquarters after you attacking from south to north. Roger, copy.
Roger, speed's going up to 330.
Fuel check.
Okay.
2's got 470.
3, 470. 4, 440.
Yeah, I told you were cheating, eh? K3 and 4 callers visual. The 3 then.
Yeah, they're cheating with fuel. If I could have put more in. Than they were meant to.
But Dolphin, this is K-Call 1.
Lusaka, Kenya 432. Roger, White Lead.
432, standby.
But Dolphin, this is K-Call 1.
K-Call 1, Dolphin 3, go ahead.
Roger, Dolphin 3, K-Call sections out, Todd section going in, everything okay.
Okay, Roger, we heard nothing from Green section. Confirm they did go through?
That's affirmative and right on target.
Okay, thanks very much.
Dolphin 3 from Green Lead.
Green, this is Dolphin 3, go ahead.
Roger, are you listening out on 1181?
Negative, I've been listening out just on the other one.
Roger, shortly I'm going to ask you to take over on that frequency to pass certain messages, which I'll advise you about.
Okay, understand 1181 you wanted.
Affirmative. Not just yet, but if you listen out on that facility.
Leader 1, Lusaka.
Lusaka, this is Green Lead. Go ahead.
Did you see that?
Green Leader, if it's not inconveniencing you, can you change frequency to 121.3? 121.3 for Lusaka approach, please.
Yeah, Roger D. 121.3.
Okay,
Good, Chief.
Okay, if you give me that. What do you want? 1, 2,
446 is standby. 432 standby.
Mach number this. 121.3. Oh, the Mach number, thanks, yes.
Wrong target, sorry, Todd.
Dolphin 3, this is green lead.
Green lead, Dolphin 3, go ahead.
Roger, go 121.3 now.
Roger, stand by.
Green lead, Lusaka.
Go ahead.
I'm still standing by for my civilian operation.
Roger D, if you'd hang fire, I'll advise you shortly.
I have one to take off to the north, and if you have no objection, another one to take off to the south, civilian, you know.
Yeah, I want to, this is lead.
Stand by one. Do you reckon they'll be able to get it? What runway are they using? Tell them no.
Fire your guns.
Yeah. Lusaka Tower, this is green lead.
Right.
Roger, I request you hold them for another 10 minutes. Thank you. Should have told him that we were going out of range, sir. Yeah. Lusaka, this is green lead.
Come again?
Roger, this is green leader. Would you now contact Dolphin 3? He'll be taking over my transmissions.
Dolphin 3, Roger. Dolphin 3, Lusaka.
Roger, Lusaka, this is Dolphin 3, do you read?
Dolphin 3, Lusaka.
Dolphin 3, this is green lead. I've advised Lusaka to hold their civilian traffic for another 10 minutes. We're going out of range shortly. Would you keep up that transmission?
Roger, do you want me to give the full transmission or just the fact that they must keep them on the ground for another 10?
Oh, no, they've got the full transmission, just to hold them on the ground for another 10 minutes until we are clear of the area.
This is Dolphin 3, do you read?
Dolphin 3, Lusaka.
Lusaka, this is Dolphin 3. I'm reading you loud and clear. This is just a message that you are to keep your air traffic on the ground for another 10 minutes. Did you copy, over?
Dolphin 3, thank you. I have a civilian aircraft coming in from the north to land in about 10 minutes. Any objection him coming to land?
Roger, there's no problem with that. You can let him come in and land. The main thing is that if there are any Air Force traffic, they are to remain on the ground, over.
Dolphin 3, thank you. I'll let in one civilian aircraft come to land, and I'll stand by for the takeoffs, as long as you remain on this frequency.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. You can let that civilian traffic land. There's no hassle on it.
Done, coming up, just 678.
The hunters are fucking squalling back like scalded cats up here. Fucking little trails of white shit in the sky.
Right, this is Dolphin 3, do you read?
Have you got the VOR?
Roger, will you call us when you're clear?
Sorry. Can't pick up the fucking DME. Yeah. I wonder if it's gone US with those bloody bumps. We're on the 32... Oh, what the fuck am I talking about? We're on the... About the 130 radial, which in fact... And what are we on true here, sir? Should be on about the 140 radial. Yeah. We are on the 140. Oh, we are on the 140. I beg your pardon, yeah. Not 13.
Roger, steady.
White Dolphin 3, where are you calling?
Yeah, I've got us on DME, 140 miles. Okay.
I'm just telling you better go low, white lead. Sorry, Dave, I still can't see you. Say again. John, left 4 o'clock to you. Roger, Vision.
I'm switching that tape recorder off. Yeah.
So, MLA 1.
Traffic can land, there's no problem on that. I will call you when we are completely clear, but I can see no problems with your civilian traffic landing at your location, over.
Green Leader 1 said I was not to allow civilian planes to take off until you said so. I'm still standing by.
Roger, just stand by. We do not want them to operate anywhere to the north of your field. If they are holding south, then it is all right, okay?
Roger, my arriving aircraft is coming from the north. I hope you are assuring safety, sir.
Roger, I suggest ask him possibly to do one wide orbit. Can you tell me what height he is at, over?
Delta Alpha, your passing level.
Delta Alpha through 85.
85, passing 85.
Take K-section, just give me a shot on power. I'm using
Dolphin.
at this time.
Dolphin 3, my aircraft is passing 85, 8,500 feet.
Roger, understand 8,500. Could he maintain that height, do one orbit, and then we'll call you clear, over?
Roger, I'll just...
Delta Alpha, did you copy?
If you can manage to let me go.
Alpha, copy. Holding over Lima, November. Okay, thanks very much.
Green 3, check. Radar, green section.
Section radar.
Your flight level 250. We'll be total at 58 for the field at 08, and we request priority landing for all our aircraft.
Suppose this is Dolphin 3, go ahead.
Calling, boys.
Affirmative, you can resume normal air traffic now, over. That is confirmed, are you reading me? That is affirmative. Our task
is complete and we are leaving the area. I repeat, we have no quarrel with Zambia or security forces or any civilian traffic. I would like to thank you very much indeed for your cooperation.
Dolphin 3, do you think? Okay, if it's possible, can you give us a bit of a rundown? We listened to most. I'm just a bit concerned about Blue, the one who's got a bit of foul loss.
Roger. As far as I can ascertain and listening out, he seems to have his mate and Blue section will give you a run on that shortly. What happened is we ran over. There was a hell of a lot of shit that came up. After we had passed over, we saw the dam but couldn't identify the target. No flares came up. Orange section managed to drop because of the ground fire, and they used that as a marker. We elected to do a racetrack and put our bombs through. It was not greatest.
Okay, Roger, I understand. Now, red and blue section, they actually dropped.
Roger, they unfortunately went over to drop with us. Some of them lost us in the turn. One dropped to the south. I saw a stick there. That may have been a can, but I saw a couple off to the south. Otherwise, the hunter dropped. I didn't see.
Okay, that's good, right. No hassle. Blue, how did you get on your drop?
So we don't know. We just took a stab. We took a guess at the fire that was started by the first one.
Okay, thanks very much. And keep us posted on Blue, and I understand for one of your sections you wear green sections.
Yeah, that's red 3.
Okay, Roger, and I understand he's going to wear green sections, Eddie.
That is affirmative.
Roger, fine, and that is due shorty shot figure.
That's right. That's all from me.
Sorted on liquor, I'll ask you.
Go ahead, Green.
Roger, the...
Is that tape still going? Have you turned it over or what? No, it's still going. Amazing.
So they reckon that's the director.
Okay, that sounds quite fine. Chris, I was just a bit worried about that other guy.
Yeah, at this stage I'm not very happy with him.
Okay, not to worry. One of the factors is that the bloody place is sitting occupied. I understand there was a lot of ground fire.
Yeah, too much.
You know, what are your considerations about the morning, man?
I'll have a bear, then I'll think about it.
Okay, I reckon if you do it high, we should be able.
Yeah, Roger.
Okay, well, I'm with Greg Todd today. Once a brown job, jumped ship and became a blue job. But Greg flew on 6 different operational squadrons and really was in the air for the entire duration of the war, from 1970 right through to the end. So I know you've got a long and very interesting story to tell, Greg, but I appreciate the opportunity to get this down on the record. So maybe just fast forward to how you ended up in the Air Force. I know you did your national service in the Army, and then you worked at Air Rhodesia for a while, and then went on pilot selection in 1970, I think it was.
That's correct, yeah. Just one correction, it was 5 operational, and the first squadron I was on was obviously the training squadron, which was 18 months of first provost and then vampires.
Okay.
And thereafter, the other 5 were operational.
Okay. Just talk us through your cadet course, Greg, a little bit about...
Well, first 4.5 months was initial training school. That was all the square bashing and running around at the double all the time, and apparently I was always late and caused the squad to get extra bloody running and things like that. And it's just normal BS, you know. And I've done it in the Browns for my national service, and but this was a bit more intense, that's for sure. And during that time, we did classroom work, and we got hounded at night by our senior course, who kept us awake all night, cleaning squash courts and things like that. But it was all character building stuff, getting us ready for the actual flying, a phase which started, which was BFS, Basic Flying School. That was in Provost T-52s, which was a radial engine trainer with a tail wheel, so it's a bit more challenging to fly than a nose wheel aircraft. And we did 120 hours on basic flying school, and then I think we were off for Christmas and we came back, and we are now on to Vampire T-11s, which is advanced flying school. Again, 120 hours on that, all formation flying, instrument flying, things like that. It's all very good training in cross countries, and we finished off with the final cross country to the Renke Marks, as it was then, which was a fine jolly, and then we came back solo from it. We did the down leg with the instructors and came back solo. One of the interesting things on that was we were flying low level from about 100 miles north of Maputo. I was at number 2, and we were low level over the sea. And probably about, I could see the wake, because the vampire sits nose up or tail down, as it were, and the efflux from the jet pipe was making a wave in the water. And he crossed over some guys fishermen in a dugout, and I got a bird's eye view of these guys bailing over the side in sheer terror. And it was just one of those things. Anyway, landed at Maputo, drank far too much, came home, and shortly after that was the wings parade. 13 of us pilots were chosen, 8 of us got our wings on that day. All 8 of us are still alive, 5 of us living in the Cape, believe it or not, and 1 in Australia, 2 in Joburg. Other courses, either lost people from accidents or war incidents, shot down and killed, things like that. So we are lucky that all 8 are still around.
Just name some of the chaps that passed out
with me. There's 2 Baldwins. Steve Baldwin got the Sword of Honour, Malcolm Baldwin, or Baldy as we call him, Steve Murray, Tony Oakley, Mike Litson, Vic Culpin, I think Pete Simmons, did I mention? I can't remember.
Pete Simmons, yeah. Okay. Same course. And then your first operational deployment, it was with Province, I think.
It was. One of the first ones was very interesting because we took it was after the Altena farm, the 4th Squadron moved up and we were operating out of the Centenary, mostly with Probs, but we had a couple of Trojans there for Recce and Kazabak. But this one particular instance was with SAS, and I took this guy with me, but there was a bit of chatter and lots of radio work, and the tech who was strapping in the observer, who was a VR, he put the switch onto mute. There's a switch on for when you're instructing, you can mute everything and speak to the student. But he never put it off again. So while I was taking off and close to the source of the radio at the airfield, it was fine. And then when I got over to the contact area, I couldn't hear a damn thing. And I could hear very faintly. Anyway, the bottom line is we put in 2 attacks and something like that. I shot through the ankle, and it was a very poor effort because of a switch. Things like that happen.
So Greg, straight after you got your wings, you went onto vampires.
Well, we were still on vampires, but we did something that was called an OCU, Operational Conversion Unit, and that's where you learn to fly an aircraft with weapons.
Right.
And we learned front gun with 20mm, 3-inch rockets with 60-pound concrete blocks on the end of them as practice rockets. We did high dive with practice bombs, and lots of formation, battle formation, and it was quite intensive, and we came up with some pretty good scores, and at the end of that you were now considered, you had got your wings and your rank at the end of wings, but at the end of the OCU the course was split up and they went to different squadrons. Some of them went to 4th Squadron, 1 Squadron Hunters, one guy went off straight back to 6th Squadron as an instructor, that was Steve Baldwin. And some of us stayed on 2 Squadron, which is what I did. And basically, time on 2 Squadron after the FCU, for me, it was just, the whole Squadron's role was border patrol and dawn strikes or practice dawn strikes. And it was a lull. The Altena Farm attack happened in December.
Of 72.
72.
And this was before that. It was before Op Hurricane.
It was before Op Hurricane.
But Todd Janneke was with you on the Vampires?
He was my boss.
He was your boss.
He's a squadron leader there. And during this time, shortly after I went to 2 Squadron, that I was with him when we did instrument flying. And the pilot under instrument flying in the left-hand seat would wear a obstructed visor attached to his proper up and down visor, so that he couldn't supposedly see out the aircraft, he could only see the instruments. And the chap next to him was the safety pilot. So he would monitor everything. He took off on the instruments, and this, something went wrong, the right-hand man, the safety pilot, would take over. But during the course of this instrument flying, you did something called unusual attitudes, where you cage some of the instruments and like the artificial horizon and the DI, and the safety pilot was instructed to fly the aeroplane around and give it back to the guy under the hood for him to sort out your unusual attitude. So I heard this very good trick that you throw the aeroplane all over the sky, pull a bit of G, put it in straight level and give it back to him so you have control. So I did this, gave it back and Todd just got under control, so stopped. He said, Greg, we're straight level. I've been flying this thing for thousands of hours. Give me an unusual attitude. So, okay, fine. So I threw it around a bit more, and then I pulled a loop, and I was pulling G, I was starting to tunnel out and grey out, and I said, well, Todd was, I think it was Todd, I hope I'm not doing him a disservice. Anyway, when he was blacked out, I said, you have control. It's amusing to see what happened after that as he recovered from his blackout and took over the aeroplane and got it back where it should be. I don't think he was too amused.
Interesting. Yeah. And then from Vampires, you went on to Provost?
Squadron Provost and
Provost, and this was now after Operation had started with the attack on Altena Farm in Centenary.
Yeah. So I'd actually done my reefer mill on Provost just before Altena, and I was operational again with Provost. And when Altena Farm happened, Simo and Alf Wild were the first two guys that went up to Centenary, and then we sent up replacements or reinforcements halfway through January, and I was on one of those.
And so you were in support of ground troops who were doing follow-ups, trying to find the perpetrators.
Yeah, and then that's where the story I've just relayed about the mutes which came in.
And then Mukumbura?
Mukumbura, right. We used to position from Centenary, FAF 3 as we called it, to Mukumbura whenever the SAS was in Mozambique. And so you just fly up the day, wait all day as standby, fly back to Centenary at night and do the same again. So this one particular time I was on standby at Mukumbura, and the call came through the brown jobs that Bert Sachs and his men were in trouble across the river in Mozambique. So I was called in there, and they were being chased. I'm sure it was Fred's. Don't think it was Zanler. And they sort of marked Flot on the run as best you can, and I could see where the forward line of troops was. I put in a front gun attack, but as I pulled out the dive at the bottom of the attack, these guys, according to Bert, rolled on their backs and just fired up into the air. It's called the fly-through method. And I picked up a round. It came through I was by myself, I didn't have a passenger, and it came through the starboard floor and would have taken a passenger through the thigh. It hit the windscreen, right-hand windscreen, where it split. The inner core came across in front of my head and smashed the quarter light windscreen on my side, and the rear piece went backwards. The outer jacket went backwards and lodged in the canopy, and that would have probably hit the guy in the eye as well. So it was lucky we didn't have anybody there. But then it gave me problems for future attacks, because as I was, I don't know how you do this, but as I was positioning to come in, I couldn't see out the left-hand window. So I had to judge it and then turn in. And once I turned in, I was in a dive, it was fine because my windscreen was intact, no problem. Anyway, I put in 2 further attacks, and the guys, I'd obviously deterred the guys, the bad guys, and our guys managed to get out of there and got recovered later. I think I've got a picture of the bullet somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know if this will work.
Yeah, let's hold it up.
That's the inner core, and that's the outer core. And this has been sitting in my cufflink box for the last 45 years or something.
Rather there.
Rather there than in me. But I know you interviewed Pete Simmons. He got shot in similar circumstances, but the bullet went in through the side of the aircraft, through his left leg, smashed that, and lodged in his right thigh. That bullet is still in his body. He was told it would work its way out to the surface, and then they'll be able to cut it and get it out. No, that's still in his.
That was also in Mukumbura, I think.
It was also out of Mukumbura.
Well, across the border.
Yeah.
Towards Kabora Vesta somewhere.
Yeah.
I think. Greg, April '74. That was a tough time for you.
Tough time for the Blue Jobs. First off, Keith Goddard and Rich Airy in a Canberra were on the 4th of April. They were doing a bombing run in Mozambique, and at that stage we used something called a 20-pound fragmentation bomb, and they would load 96 of them in a bomb box, all facing down, and you could drop different divisions at a time or ripple the whole lot. Anyway, as they were running in on the target, one of the safety caps spun off one of the bombs and actually hit another bomb, causing a detonation. And then it was just a chain reaction up, all the bombs exploding up to the bomb bay, and then the whole lot just went bang, blew the wings off, and the nose just went straight forward. When they found the aircraft, Rich Airy was still holding on to the bomb release button. So that was a very sad day, and that was the last time the aircraft was using those bombs. Later, and I'll discuss that later, we came up with the Alpha bombs, the 300 round jobs. That was the first thing. The second one was on the 14th of April, '74. Chris Wyman and Pat Durrett took off from Centenary to go Recce for tour camps north of the Zambezi. Well, they didn't come back. So obviously they'd force landed, or we didn't know what had happened. But over the next couple of days, we positioned aircraft to, I think it was Tet, and myself and Willie Wilson took Provost, and we went to Nova Magui, which is now underwater in Cabora Bassa. But we based up there, and with the Portuguese army looking after us, and some the brown jobs that we had up there, I can't remember who they were. I think they're SAS and RLI. And we were doing searches for Chris Wyman's aircraft. And as far as we were concerned, Willie and I, we flew about 400 or 500 yards apart and flew a grid pattern. And we covered the area. Decks were there with guys looking out the windows all along the sides of the decks. Allies, we even had hunters in there looking and trying to find Chris Wyman. On the
what aircraft were they flying?
They're Trojan, sorry.
Trojan. Okay,
Trojan.
no, sorry, carry on. Yeah.
On 19th of April, Al Bruce and Clive Ward came from. In fact, the other guys were at Estima, not Tet. They came from Estima, and they'd been flying Trojans at that stage, and. They said, well, listen, we've been stuck with this old Trojan, you know, the only aircraft in the world can take a bird strike on its trailing edge. Why don't we swap? You fly the Trojans and we'll take over the Provost, which is what happened. So the next day, Willie and I got airborne on the 20th in Trojans, and the Trojan had rocket pods under the wings, and therefore if you're flying level, you had to keep lifting the rocket pod out the way to check your holding position on the other guy, and he had to do the same with you. Anyway, we were doing this grid search again, and at this particular time, I had rising ground to my right, and Willie was on my left. So I was not silhouetted. Behind me, we flew either side of a camp, and Willie was silhouetted, and he'd kept his height, so he's still level with me. So he's about 400 feet of ground instead of being on the trees like we usually do. Anyway, I just checked his position, and seconds later, something made me look again. I lifted the wing again, and he wasn't there. And I transmitted, Willie, you know. And so I pulled the power off the aircraft, dived down the side of this sort of mountain I was on, got to the bottom, pulled it up, pulled the wing over, got the pod out the way, and I saw this pinprick of light that just suddenly grew to a fireball the size of a double-story house. And that was Willie hitting the ground. And then, obviously, I started flying circles around, and then with the fire, the first 6 rockets were used for marker rockets in each pod of these 37 millimeter snebs, and they had a 6-inch plug of white phos in there. And these rockets now, with the heat, were starting to shoot off, and it looked like that Space Shuttle Challenger when they had the accident on takeoff with those solid rocket boosters twizzling away, and that's the sort of thing that I was seeing. Anyway, obviously the guys hadn't survived that. I got a call out. Peter Boyer was in the area. I think he was flying a Kivet, it was a Cessna 185 at the time, and he'd been doing recce and search for Chris Weinman as well. And I got a call to him. Next thing, and I gave the grid reference, and next thing we had half the Air Force ready to assist. But somehow they seem to have gone to the wrong grid reference. I think it's about 10 Ks out. I saw them all flying in a big Balbo at the wrong place. So I called them over, and then PB was high, and he said, "Gosh, look at that camp, you know. It's a huge camp, huge." So Chris Dickinson joined up with me, and we put in strikes with the Trojans, and the hunters put in strikes. At that stage I was running low on fuel, and I went back to Nova Magte and took over one of the provinces and went back. In the meantime, they put troops on the ground, and they were searching around, and they found all sorts of documents. The camp obviously was deserted after that. Whoever fired the rocket must run like hell. They were searching documents and things like that. Then one guy said, "Oh, he found a bone gun." A bone gun? You know, it was nowhere near the crash site. I said, "Look on the back, is there a name?" "Yes, Weinman." I said, "That's the guy we've been looking for." And I said, "Okay, well, look," because I was now like airborne controller to a degree, and I said, "Well, just widen your sweep. And they went further and further, and they found Chris's aircraft. And it had come down, the rocket had caused the engine to detach, and the aircraft had come down in a big tree, the only big tree in the area. And it got caught up by the wings and tail and was hanging nose down. And the bad boys had got the bodies out, buried them in the shallow graves, and then pushed branches up. But I think the aircraft had caught fire and burnt the tree in the first place. Now, I'd flown past that tree about 3 or 4 times, and it just looked like it'd been struck by lightning. It was so well concealed. And that's how we found Chris Weinman. And I think it was Darryl Watt was on the ground, and he's got a story about it from the SAS side. I think that was somewhere on Facebook. But it was, you know, a bit of a bad deal, as I said, a black April for the Air Force. Very remiss of me, I should have mentioned that Willie Wilson, Tech, was Flight Sergeant Roger Andrews, so we lost 2 guys there. So in April, we lost 6 guys. And
this was reported as a training accident?
The 2 Trojans that were shot down were reported as training accidents.
Yeah.
You can imagine how that burnt a hole in my,
But you can see why. If they were in Mozambique, I don't think anybody was supposed to know
that we were operating there.
And I don't think the Portuguese wanted it to be
advertised,
widely known. So that's probably why that was done.
Yeah.
But Greg, then you went on to 7th Squadron, onto Alouettes.
Alouettes, yeah. But before that, we did a paradak jump ourselves, and we did a couple of days training at the parachute training school at Serum, and there's all the cooks and bottle washers from the Air Force who thought they wanted to jump out of an aeroplane. But a lot of us were pilots, and it cost the government a lot of money to train. So instead of us jumping out and breaking legs on the earth, they threw us out over Lake Mac so we could drown. I remember when it came to the jump, Pete Simmons was the guy, he's the guy who stood in the door first. I was behind him, and they dropped 6 at a time. And it was, when you went out, it was such, we went out to 12,000 feet, so we were about 7,000 foot off static line, 7,000 feet of hanging in the chute. It was wonderful. It was such an exhilarating feeling. And the drill was you detach your reserve chute, lower it down, and then when you got near the water, you'd lift your legs parallel to the water and present a larger surface area, so you just spot and not go straight down like a diver with feet first. But I'd had 600 hours or 700 hours on Provis, and the actual parachute harness on a Provis was identical to the big parachutes that we were using to dive with one big exception. They had a circlip that went round the inside of the attachment. And the drill was, once you got in the water, you pulled the circlip out, twisted it, and you belted it, and you came out your parachute. Well, I twisted mine round, fine, and I was thumping hell out of it, and nothing was happening because the damn circlip was in there, so awful. But now the wind had picked up, and I was pulling my parachute out, so I was doing a bit of body surfing, trying not to drown. How'd you get out of this one? And I thought, and I let go, or I think you call it a capoc or capole or something like that, attachment, and of course the parachute just dropped, and then they hauled me on board, and it was time to go and have beers. But it was just an aside. I later did, in civilian life, a tandem freefall jump, which was another story, but I think I was walking about 6 inches above the ground for 4 days after that, because that was such an adrenaline rush. It was great stuff. Joining 7th Squadron, we did about 80 hours on Alouette 2s, which were cheaper to run than the Alouette 3, and we did all our basic training on those, and then we finished off with about 50 hours on the actual Alouette 3, and trained all sorts of things like winching and cargo swinging, and of course using the weapons, the MAG on the chopper. One interesting thing about when we were doing that training, or later on when I was training, Henry Jarvie was a well-known tech in the Air Force, and he was actually training a new technician about hoisting, and the story was that after he trained the guy to use the winch and load him up and down to the helicopter, they swapped positions, and the trainee would now pick Henry up and down. Anyway, Henry had organised with me that when it was his time to be on the winch, I must go and hover over water, which is a trick we used to do sometimes, and dunk the bloke in the water. Anyway, that duly happened. Over the water, the trainee lets Henry down, soaking wet, up into the chopper, and Henry's just bursting out laughing like heck. And anyway, it transpired when we got back that Henry had the new trainee's blue uniform on under his overalls. So the trainee now had sodden blue uniform to go home with on the bus, and Henry got his dry stuff out the locker. So silly things like that happened. But
then you started working with dogs.
Yeah, the first instance, the dogs didn't actually do a lot. We were operating Makuti, Komaki, Angwa Bridge area, and I can't remember the name of the unit we were with because it's so sad. I've tried to find out what happened. We went in there with dogs. Mike Liston and Rich Blimmers were in the K car. I was with Ginge Morris on the G car. And it's probably about my third bush trip. We'd done some fire force actions, but nothing serious. But this one, we put in police with tracker dogs after this contact had happened, or reaction to the contact, and following up. And then I put in a stick near a re-entrant. It was going up a mountain, and these guys, they put 2 guys in the bottom of the re-entrant, and one on each side, and they were sweeping up towards a clump of bushes, when from that clump of bushes the terrorists were hiding there, and they came out and they just revved our guys. They dropped 3 of them dead straight away, and one survived. Well, that was a shock to the system, and we had a South African chopper with us. Guys got reinforcements, and there was nowhere to land, and they had to cut an LZ for the helicopter. And the South African guy went in there to try and pick up the wounded and the bodies, and it was too small, and whatever happened, he managed to have what's called a tip strike. And then he wandered off back to base with his aeroplane going waka, 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 not very well. And they cut it slightly larger, and I got in there and I got the 3 guys out. And we were flying off to an airfield about 15-20 minutes away. And, it's a bit gruesome, but you can cut this out if you want. But what I remember of that trip was, because the aeroplane, helicopter flies slightly nose down, all the blood ran forward and was pooling around my rudder pedals, and it formed, coagulated and formed a dark brown crust on the top, and it was rippling. It was like a skin on a rice pudding. And then when I came to land, of course, the attitude of the helicopter changes, and it ran back and it broke, and it was all crimson again. And to clean that helicopter was a bit of a mission. But when we got there, it was the squadron commander, George Alexander, and my very good mate, Bruce Collicott, who later got killed on Dax. They were the crew, and they came out with the body bags. And my tech and I, Ginge Morris, we got the bodies out, and I basically, with each body, I got his cap and went through the pockets, got diaries out, pens out, things. I cut off the bottom dog tag, and we wrapped them in some polythene or whatever, put the guys in the body bags, and off the deck went. I then had to take the kit back to the OC of the squadron, of this unit, which is very sad, and hand over the kit. The sad thing about that was one of the guys, his mother, worked with my mother in Elder Sailing Centre in Linquenda Arcade, Baker Avenue, Salisbury. And every time we went to visit my mother, I saw this woman, and it just broke me up. I didn't know what to do.
Oh, so.
Yeah. Anyway, a bit emotional about that.
And then working with the sub-aqua unit.
Oh, yeah.
Greg, that was some time with them.
Yeah, that was an interesting interlude. I think I was the Alloy 3 at Wankie, FAF 1, and there was an incident whereby a South African Air Force helicopter, I think it was Keith Coppin, I stand to be corrected on that, I think that's who the pilot was, and he had picked up 2 Kazakhs near the Binga area at night, and it was obviously a reasonable moon, and he was flying them back, I think he was flying them actually back to Binga, when he had a mechanical failure. In fact, the drive shaft between the gearbox and the rotors broke. And he had plenty of engine noise, because it was still going, but the rotors were starting to wind down. So he auto-rotated at night, and he saw this nice flat area, and he thought, oh, I'll just land there, that's great. And he did that. Only thing is, it was Kariba weed, and the aircraft, settled, and then the blades cut a great big circle, and it sank. Anyway, the story is that the first 2 guys on the bank were the Kazakhs. Whether that was true or not, I don't know. But they were safe and nobody was hurt. But I went there the next day to start recovery and things like that, and take in a board of inquiry. Well, that came later, a bit later. But at one stage, 3 guys from the police sub-aqua unit, including Alan Brent, were flown up to Binga, and then I took them out to the incident site. And the army was, and it was, they had quite a powerful boat. And the trick was that they went down with 44-gallon drums, which were inverted, but they were full of water, but they were put down upside down and tied to the helicopter. And what they would do, first they took off the blades of the helicopter, and we showed them on our helicopter. Hugh McCormick was my tech, and we showed them how to remove the blades, and they got theirs off. Then they tied these 44-gallon drums there, and then they had a compressor on the boat, and they put compressed air into the bung of the 44-gallon drum, and of course forced the water out, made the thing buoyant. And they had 4 or 5 of these drums around, and that was sufficient to raise the chopper to the surface. So it was away from the lake bed, and but just the mast of the chopper was showing. And then they towed it with this motorboat very slowly around to a place where they think that they could actually land it, and there's a bit of a ramp there for them to pull it up. So they got that around, and I'd been off doing a relay change or something like that, but I was always attached to the scene, and as I said, I'd brought in the board of inquiry earlier. Anyway, when I got back, they had a bulldozer there, a small bulldozer, attached to the nose wheel by a rope, and they were trying to pull this alouette out the lake. Well, it wasn't too long. If they'd continued much longer, they would have pulled the nose off it. Because for a start, the wheels had dug in because the brakes were still on. So I landed, obviously, and showed Alan and these guys how to release the brakes on the helicopter. But I realised it wasn't going to be enough, because it was well and truly dug in now into the mud. Mm. So I made my helicopter as light as possible. I had a cargo hoist on my helicopter, fortunately. And I made the aircraft as light as possible, to the extent that actually pumped fuel out. I brought it down to red light, which gives you 10 or 13 minutes of flying time. That made it very light. And I didn't take, Hugh wasn't in the aircraft, but he was marshalling me from the bank. And he had taught the guys, the sub-aqua guys, how to connect the hook and everything like that. And I went and hovered over the helicopter, lowered it down so they had slack in the chain. They hooked it up. I then took up pressure, tension, and obviously I wasn't going to lift a fully equipped helicopter full of water, but I was able to pull to maximum power, and the water just gushed out of it. Mm-hmm. And while that was happening, when it was down to, obviously we were having some success, the guy then pulled it out with the with the bulldozer, and of course I was obviously keeping it up, and out we went, detached and landed. Obviously put more fuel in, and and I was, as I say, I was in and out, and they then dismantled this helicopter, and that's when they found that this three-wheel drive unit was totally missing. Anyway, they had a special recovery vehicle there that had recesses in it to put tail booms and blades and, a proper recovery vehicle. And they got this helicopter onto the truck in bits and pieces. But then it was very late, and they didn't want to move at night. So they sat there, had a few beers, and the next morning they went out in convoy with the bulldozer leading. Well, all this activity over about 3 days had been well and truly watched from the other side of the river. And guess what was waiting for them? The bulldozer went over the landmine. No problem. Oh, straight over it, no problem. Because there's a flat plate and the pressure...
Smothered the blast.
No, it didn't set it off. Because it's a flat plate and it wasn't sufficient. This is my understanding of it. People might think I'm talking absolute rubbish, but I don't know. It went over the landmine and it didn't go off. This is the bottom line. So did other vehicles missed it. The one that hit it was the one with the helicopter on it. And it hit with the back wheel and it just twisted this truck and warped the already damaged helicopter even further because it was bolted in. So, long story short, they eventually got this helicopter back to Salisbury and it was taken out in a C-160, a transhaul back to South Africa. It flew again, and it flew for the South African Air Force. And a little bit of history. Later on, the SAF sold that helicopter to a company that was working in Mozambique.
Oh, I think another one.
Oh dear, I do have the number somewhere. But the bottom line was, my mate John Blythewood, also a helicopter pilot and hunter pilot, his son was a helicopter pilot, civil helicopter pilot. He flew that same helicopter in Mozambique all those years later. So just end of story.
And I think I know that chopper. Greg, the July 75 was a black day for the RLI. In fact, it involved young De Beer, who I worked very closely with during my time in 2 Commando, and then John Coe, who I also knew. So it was a very, very sad day, and an engagement that you were involved in.
There'd been a contact to the east of Fafor, Mount Darwin, and it was the TF, I think, I don't know which TF unit it was, but on the follow-up, these guys were in a dry riverbed, and a stick of 4, a warrant officer 2, Bain, and a trooper Pottie. And when they rounded a bend in the river, these gooks opened up on them, and they culled these 2 guys, and wounded the other guys in the stick, who obviously withdrew. They then called out the fire force, and we went in there with the fire force. It was Joey Deploy, in fact, was one of the officers involved. I think I actually put him in there later on during the day. But one of the guys was ex-American.
John Coe.
John Coe, yeah. And, on arrival at the scene, he went over the side of the riverbank and went down to these guys to try and find out what was going on. And unfortunately, he got culled as well. These chaps, terrorists, were actually holed up in it was like a turn in a riverbed, and during flooding it washed away the banks of the river, and there was an undercut, and the roots of a tree had overgrown, and there was a nice place for them to hide. I think it was only one terrorist, quite honestly. I think they had managed to sort the rest out, or the others had escaped. But this guy had a perfect hiding place, and so now we were 3 men down. The problem was, we didn't know if the guys were dead. They were too close to the terrorist hiding place. We didn't know where the terrorist hiding place was. And I wasn't K-Card, the driver, but I can imagine his predicament. You didn't want to put down heavy fire next to your own guys that close. Joe Deploy was trying to take a look over the side, and these guys opened up on him, and he got creased through the forehead. And that they withdrew. Now it's getting a bit late in the day, and they positioned ambushes around with reinforcements, and Bob Mackenzie went in with some SAS guy with their night vision goggles and night sights and things like that, and they were able to find the 3 guys. Obviously they were deceased, And by this stage, they fired into this place, but the guy had gone. And during the night, this guy broke out. I think he'd actually taken the MAG from the riverbed, and he broke out and ran through one of the stops and opened fire. And Corporal De Beer, he got hit. I think he was hit in the leg by the femur, and he was by himself, and he had a radio, and we couldn't go in there because there was thick bush, and the moon had gone down, and we couldn't get any reinforcements to him. And we actually heard him dying over the radio, which is very, very sad. I will remember that for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Greg, June 76, there was a very serious engagement west of Chipinge, I think it was, involving Neil Jackson, that you were involved in.
The incident in June 1976 with Neil Jackson, he was with 3 Platoon, 5 Independent Company. He was the youngest bloke ever to fly as in the K car as a commander of ground forces. And there was this punch-up, and 5 terrorists had been killed, and one chap had managed to run into a tree line. The chaps followed up, and they didn't see this guy, and he opened up on them. And he unfortunately dropped Mark Torrington and John Crew. They were killed at that time, except it wasn't known that they were killed. And we could, again, it was like the Battle of Blood River that I explained earlier. As I said, we couldn't put any suppressing fire on this guy because we had 2 wounded guys, as far as we were concerned, in a way. But in the end, Rich Ament and Rob Smith from the callsign actually snivelled in there very bravely, and they managed to extricate the blokes. But they found out that the terrorist wasn't on the ground under cover. He was actually sitting in a tree, and he had full range of fire over anything coming into that wooded area. Once these guys, I think they got bronze crosses for that. Once they'd extricated them, the deceased, Russell Broadbent, who was a New Zealander, he was actually a doctor, but he was flying the legs, and he then had a good idea of where this guy was. Anyway, he destroyed it and turned it all into matchwood, and we got the guy. But that was a very sad day because once again we were the losers.
Greg, you were going north of Chipinge. You were involved. Was it in one of the attacks on Leopard Rock Hotel?
We were operating out of Faf 8 Amtani, and for whatever reason, somebody came round with a Alouette 3 that was in training configuration. It had all the doors on, it had the dual controls fitted, so the pilot normally flies it from the right-hand seat, and the instructor, or the second pilot, would be in the centre seat, and has full flying controls. And all the seats in the front face forward. So Wally Wallace was the engineer, he was in the left-hand seat. I won't name the pilot because, he unfortunately has passed away since. But we had a mission to go to Leopard Rock and deliver something. The pilot was flying from right-hand seat and waving at all the troops driving around the roads by Nyanga in the mountains. We came around this one corner and suddenly we were in cloud. Well, Alouettes aren't equipped to fly at dark nights or in cloud. And unfortunately, he panicked, and he was pumping the collective up and down. The VSI vertical speed indicator was giving a rate of climb of 2,000 feet a minute, 2,000 feet a minute down. We weren't actually doing that, but that's the input he was putting in. And if you ever saw in the front of a helicopter, you had that little mast with a bit of cotton or a bit of wool on the back, and that was hopefully when you're flying straight level or whatever, that should flow straight back and give you extra indication. Well, this bit of wool slowly tapered and was hanging down. Then it was going the other way, which meant we were flying backwards. No speed on the clock. Pumping this thing, and I thought, I could have taken control myself. And I thought, no, I'll just talk him through it. And I said to him, first off, stop pumping the collective. Just put it in a position where you think is about right. And he did. And now we've got 300 feet a minute descent. I said, pull it a bit more. Now we were level. I said, a bit more. Now we're climbing. Now I'm a little bit happier. But we're still going backwards. I said, okay, cycle it. Ease it forward. And this started to point the right way. Then the airspeed started to come up. And I said, okay, 45 knots. Hold that. And then put on the bank. And we spiraled out of this. We must have been over Mozambique. I don't know. But we spiraled up and we broke out between two layers of cloud, and you could see to fly normally. Well, we were flying normally, but on instruments prior to that. And we just headed west, back towards Rhodesia. And there was a hole in the clouds, the lower layer of clouds, and we went down there and we came out straight over Pottie Grand Reef. Wally Wallace got out and he said, I want to swear, but he was very relieved. And interesting, people don't believe about flying helicopters at night and think that's the sort of things, we had one that actually did crash going into Thornhill. I can't remember the crew, but he got disorientated, and unfortunately for him there was another pilot there to help him sort it out. The other thing I've got on my list, consulting my notes, is the new Recce thing, 19th of April, Easter Sunday. Everything seems to happen on the Easter Sunday. They had the trout rally, which is where all the bikers from Africa and South Africa go, and they'd had that in Pottie somewhere. It's called a trout rally. And these guys, and that goes on, and I've actually done one later myself after the war, but not as a biker, as a supporter. But there's too much drinking going on and things like that. And these guys were actually going home to South Africa, 2 bikes with pillion passengers, and they came across this group of terrorists on the road. They mistook them for security forces. An altercation arose, and these guys just opened up on them, and they killed 3 of them. One guy somehow managed to get away, but the next day I was called up to do the follow-up, and I went in there with Ant White of the SAS and to do the follow-up. But they had also hit a train prior to the motorbike incident, and it was a double-headed diesel locomotives, and they had put landmines in the railway line, obviously boosted it, and both locos were on their sides, derailed, and the rest of the train was strung out behind them, and they'd revved the train with AK fire, hadn't injured anybody. I don't know what happened to the drivers. They probably were injured, but they'd been removed by the time we got there. And we did the follow-up, leapfrogging and trying to find tracks and things like that. The bottom line was, unfortunately, we didn't catch these guys. But
they killed 3 of the 4 bikers.
They did indeed, yeah.
It was on the Bike Bridge Road.
It was on the Fort Vic to Bike Bridge.
I remember that.
Apparently, some South African chappie and his wife arrived in a car shortly thereafter, and they just fired into the bush around, and then they gave assistance or tried to sort it out and set off the alarm sort of thing. And the troops came to help. The other one, this annoyed the hell out of Pete Simmons, because for a long time he's been asking me what I did for 6 days, flying around with the station commander in a helicopter away from base. We went down to Bulawayo and Recce and places like that. But I was actually we were actually with a colonel from the South African Air Force. And basically we were looking for potential sites to put up the early warning radars. So if they thought they were going to be attacked in South Africa, by putting the equipment in the south of Rhodesia, they would have that much more advanced and scramble their guys to counter-attack. But it was very interesting, and some of the places we went to. But and anyway, that was top secret for a while. Well, it still is. One of the things we did on the 6th of June 76, unfortunately, there was a landmine incident near Chipinga, and it was a bucky, a pickup, and it was both the family, husband, wife, 2 kids, and a girl called Shirley Wixty.
Wixty, yes. Lost her legs.
Yeah. They were on the back of the bucky, holding onto the rail just behind the cab, and they had the mine with the rear wheels, and it flipped the truck over and just disintegrated the back. All I saw when I got there was two bits of, because it was lying at an angle of 45 degrees, nose down, and just 2 bits of chassis, all the springs, axle, everything had gone. And his wife was next to him, and these guys are now upside down, and she'd gone mauve and purple, and she'd obviously passed away, and we were reassuring him, everything's okay. The 2 kids terrible mess. And poor Shirley Wicksteed, she survived, obviously. And I think it was Mark Aitchison. He casevaced her straight away to, I think, Recce Hospital. And she became quite famous in Rhodesia for, lifting morale of people with similar injuries.
Yes.
But we still had the problem of getting the father, Mr. Bertha, out of this truck because the door was all twisted and jammed. And somebody had come in with oxyacetylene kit and we were about to light this lot up and cut him out. So, can't you smell the fuel? If you do that, you're going to fry him. Never thought of that. Okay, all right. Anyway, we got from some road gang some long crowbars and brought them back, and the guys were able to prise the doors open and get him out. But a bit of a mess of a scene, yeah, very, very sad.
Yes. Well, the Chipinga area was incredibly hard hit. Chipinga, Cashel, Alseta, wow, just about completely cleaned out. They took a very, very hard knock.
Well, while we were there, we were based at Chipinga, and there's the nurses there, and there was going to be this football matches, Blues and Browns versus the hospital staff. There was supposed to be a lot of fun. Anyway, we got called out, off we went, so we didn't partake. But there was this Rhodesian VR, I think he worked for the telecommunications centre in Bulawayo, a guy called Tony Robinson. Anyway, he got injured during this, social soccer game, and he was complaining about his leg. So we spoke to the doctor and said, well, tell him he's got a broken leg, and put him in plaster. So he did, and this guy walked around on crutches from groin to toes in plaster of Paris with his leg all signed. After 3 days, I said, called the doctor and said, you can cut this off now, we've had all fun. He was not amused. Right. It wasn't all war, we had a lot of fun. But in Mount Darwin, I bought some biltong and it wasn't ready for eating. So I opened up about 6 paper clips and stuck it in a locker that we had to dry out a bit. And I went to do a relay change. And when I came back, the biltong was gone. And each paper clip was a piece of paper written mice. The guys had carved my biltong. And I thought, I know who it was. It was Jarvie and Tubbs. Usual guys. I did a few ops with I did lots of ops with SAS, but this one was where they're operating as Fire Force to give relief to the RLI at some stage. And my Fire Force was at Rhodesian, and the op was going to be done from Buffalo Range. I think it was FF7. But for whatever reason, I don't know if it was technical or what, their K-car wasn't able to operate. So I, just in my K-car, Bert Keatley is my engineer, flew across and we linked up, picked up Brian Robinson as K-car commander and set off with their Fire Force. And Simo was the other K-car driver. He came along to join us later after his aircraft was serviceable. We were talked on to a thing from the OP by the Zulu Scouts. You can see these terrorists, and we started to open fire, but the K-car was just bang, nothing, recock, bang, nothing, recock, bang. It was just total stoppage. So I thought, well, the quickest thing to do is put it on the ground, and I don't want to go miles away because these guys are bomb shelling. I couldn't be landing amongst them after they bomb shelled. So I landed right next to the Zulu Scouts. Bill Sykes and his helicopter came down, landed right next to me. His tech jumped out, my tech jumped out, opened the cowling, the cowling on the left side where the ammo was stored. And one of the clips holding the tray or train for the ammo had become detached. So I clipped it back, got airborne again, and of course now the element of surprise, well and truly lost. Follow-ups continued throughout the day. We talked the DAC in, they dropped their sticks, and Simo came along later and with a second K-car. I think at the end of the day we got 12 of about 36. Wow. And we're mopping up, and I'm flying back with Brian Robinson. He said, well, what do you think of that, Greg? I said, it's the biggest cock-up I've ever been in my life. And he said, why? I said, well, this is what, the SAS were magnificent troops, but not at Fire Force, in my opinion. They may have got better later, I don't know. 12th of November 76, we'd been doing an operation again with, may have been the SAS, I'm not sure. At the end of the day, mopping up, we had to bring parachutes out of the drop zone and to the what's called the land tail, which is the follow-up troops that brought fuel and extra sticks as close to the contact area as possible. But this was just a short hop, about 3 or 4 miles. And what we'd do, the troops were on the ground trying to get these parachutes out of trees and things like that. Occasionally we'd go hover next to them and blow them up and help them inflate and get them out the trees. But they'd get a whole pile of parachutes, and because of expediency, we'd just pile them on in the back of the helicopter, and then the tech would make it like a starfish and straddle them, and so that no bits and pieces flew out, and then we'd fly them to the land tail, and with rotor still running, get them off and go back for another batch. Anyway, we just landed probably from the second batch, and getting the parachutes off, and I see a red thing amongst them. And I was with Tech Tony Jordan. I said, Tony, what's that? Is that our fire extinguisher? He grovels around, gets it out. Yes, it is. Clips it back onto the bulkhead at the back of the helicopter. End of story. Well, it wasn't the end of the story, because I think about 2 days later, I've been trooping again from Buffalo Range. One of my last tasks was to pick up a stick of Zulu Scouts, and I don't think they had a white officer with them or a white operator with them. They were all black troops, as you know, a lot of them turned terrorists. But I'd had trouble with the landing light, and it wasn't retracting properly, and it was giving a problem. Anyway, as we were returning to Buffalo Range to the fort, I was sort of smelling things. What's that? And I turned around and I looked at the back, and there's just sparks and flames between the back of the cab and the other half of the helicopter, which is just where the fuel tank was. So it was 6 inches in front of the fuel tank. And what to do? Oh, don't like this. And I threw it at the ground, auto-rotated, and I didn't have to auto-rotate, but it was the quickest way to get down, and then pulled power, landed it. Fortunately, there was a field big enough to take 2 choppers, and I landed it at the end of the field, leaving space for a second chopper. Tony got out. I was still closing the helicopter down, shutting motors, and he got the fire extinguisher off the wall, and he went to put the fire out. Well, he pressed the lever, and a squirt of water went... The thing had discharged 2 days before, when it had been pulled out the aircraft by the ropes of the parachute, and it had gone off then. So he had no option. He took his shirt off and beat the bloody flames out with his shirt. So I think we got I did. I got a commendation for that, amongst other things. The DMM, Drinking Man's Medal, we called it.
The flames and sparks, where were they?
No, the electrical from the landing light problem.
Okay.
So it obviously seized or arced or whatever and burnt the electrical loom, and by the time I got to see it and smell it, it was now burning furiously behind me, or behind the tech rather, or the troops. And the troops weren't too happy to guard the helicopter. Anyway, continuing from that, I got a Mayday call out before I landed, and the first person on the scene was Todd in a Cessna 185, a Kivet, and he came over, and I could hear him, I could see his lights, so I fired a mini flare, pencil flare, and I had my, what they call it, SABI, search and rescue beacon, so I was able to talk to him. And he, on the way, he was faster, but on the way, the cavalry was John Blyford flying a helicopter with his tech, and Mike Borles as safety pilot. Because it was pitch black, and as I've explained, not a good idea. So they managed to come down, land, and pick us up and take us away. And I saw the helicopter a couple of days later on a recovery vehicle, and the whole inside, or the whole area behind the cabin, was just scorched as flame marks. So it was a lucky break, because if that field hadn't have been there, we would have ended up in the trees.
Greg, from 7th Squadron, you went on to Canberra's.
Yeah, went on to Cairns. Initially, we trained on something called a T4, which is a training aircraft, and that had 2 ejector seats and dual controls, and 2 pilots sitting next to each other, with a navigator in the back, and basically that was just doing lots of circuits and bumps and instrument flying and things like that, and then doing it solo. The instructor would get out and you'd fly it off by yourself, and then to go on to the B2, that was just a single pilot operation, and the instructor would come with you. Well, initially he flew the aeroplane and I sat on the jump seat next to him, and he so I was watching what he did, circuits and bumps, and then he would we'd land, swap positions, and then I'd fly it, and he would sit there and say, all right, you're doing okay, you're doing that wrong, or whatever, as it goes. But that was, and then the carried on operational conversion unit, learning how to do photo recce and all sorts of various bomb profiles. When we did photo recce, it was usually quite high and a long time in the air, and the aircraft would get so cold. It was a thing called cold soaking, because the temperature's up there very, very cold. And we would, when we were doing photo recce, we would wear a tracksuit under our flying overalls, for warmth when you get up there. But you're taking off from 25, 30 degrees at Salisbury with this great big bubble canopy. It's like a magnifying glass. And the theory was that if you hadn't got airborne within 20 minutes, you gave it away because you'd sweated so much, you'd lost so much weight. And just an aside, the comforts of flying a Canberra at altitude doing photo recce. And some of those flights were so long. And I remember one time I was flying with Doug Paget, and he says, Greg, I think my arse has just gone to sleep. I said, why, Glob? He said, no, I've just heard it snore. 100% oxygen, go. Because he's flying, his bum is about 4 feet in front of you. Yeah. The other trick they used to do is tie your shoelaces to the rudder pedals so you couldn't get out the aeroplane. Yeah. Anyway, one of the things that were very innovative in the Air Force with inventions, and when sanctions happened, industry, we did everything to beat sanctions, as you know. And to start a Canberra, you used to use a starter cartridge. These starter cartridges, to start the Canberra motor, you needed one for each motor, and 300 would not have lasted us too long had we used the cartridges. So they invented a system whereby you had compressed air, a special attachment to the nozzle which went into the breech where the starter cartridge would have gone. You had a big wire mesh grid that went over the front of the engine so that nothing got ingested into the engine. And when you were ready to start the engine, you give the thumbs up. The guy on the ground who's looking at you would just open his compressed air, probably about 5 or 6 bottles, the high pressure, and it would spin up the motor with less stress than using a starter cartridge. And you'd open the fuel lever and press the emergency relight lever button rather, and the bangers would go and set off the fuel, and there you were, burning and turning. But and we had in the main bases we had these compressed air bottles for starting. So there's one way of beating sanctions, and we weren't going to be brought to our knees in 3 months or whatever Harold Wilson said.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, flying, recce flying, very accurate flying was needed. It's like doing astro shots for the NAVs. Half a degree, 1 degree of bank speeds, so that because the actual cameras would take overlapping pictures. I think they overlap by about 20-30%. So you had to keep them aligned, very accurate flying. Nav was in the nose, something called a banana sight, and he was tracking his map, and we were looking for either mostly for mapping purposes or looking for terrorist camps. And with the overlap, the blokes in JISPAS, Joint Services Photo Interpretation Centre service, they could actually through stereoscopic lenses get 3D out of these things, and that would really help them find camps. And we went far and wide, and a lot of the attacks we did, the blokes had maps and photographs to work off, and likewise the ground jobs we supplied them. I have spoken about the loss of Keith Goddard and Recce, and with the 96 20-pound bombs that had the accident that destroyed the aircraft. We were then, it was before I got to the squadron, they weren't able to use the Canberra for closer support anymore until they developed something else. And Peter Betterboyer and Cochrane's engineers came up with a solution, and they developed it. And it was called a bouncing bomb. And essentially what it was, there is John's going to produce a picture of it, but to describe it, it had little rubber balls, and they were super bounce. So if you dropped them from a height, they would recover 90% of the height from which they were dropped. And they were placed inside a small light gauge metal shell. Then the balls, and then inside of that was a cast iron, quarter-inch cast iron. That was the shrapnel, and the inside of that was obviously the explosive. And it had something called an always pistol. Didn't matter which way up it bounced, it would detonate 0.06 of a second after impact. So the thing was, you screamed in at 350 knots, 300 feet, and you dropped these bombs, and it was sufficient speed for them to hit the ground, bounce up, enough G initiate, and they'd blow up about 10 feet above the ground. And when you drop them en masse, it's quite impressive, very good area of shrapnel. Each aircraft had 6 hoppers with 50 of these Alpha Mark II bombs in them, and you could drop any combination of 50 up to 300. And on the big rays, when we were flying externals, we'd fly 4 abreast, and each aircraft would cover an area of 150 yards wide by 600 yards long. So with 4 of us abreast, we covered a blanket area of 600 yards by 600 yards. And that's how we did a lot of the externals, like FC camp and things like that. One of the things about dropping these bombs, the safety height was considered to be 300 feet. But if you drop into rising ground, it's rather like dropping parachuters out of a DAC into rising ground. They don't like it. And likewise with these bombs. Anyway, one of our aircraft dropped bombs, and a piece of, because a lot of the shrapnel obviously is going up as well as down, and a piece of shrapnel came through the nose cone, and it was very hot, and it hit the nose cone. Fortunately, it bent in an L shape. The nav was still lying on his couch at the bomb site, and it hit him straight in the sternum. And as I say, luckily it was L-shaped, otherwise it would have gone straight through him. And a flat piece of the L lodged. It was Paddy Morgan. Anyway, when they got back, he was my navigator normally, and he was flying with somebody else. And I was out there, obviously radioed ahead to say, we got an injury, and the medics were there to get him out. And when I opened the hatch and saw him, I said, "Jesus, Paddy, you'll do anything to get out of flying with me, won't you?" And I've got a photograph of another incident where Glenn was involved, whereby he was hit by a SAM 7 Strela, and it opened up the back of his port engine, just like a peeled banana. And obviously he closed it down and flew back on one motor. But we don't know if later on, I think it was off Urich, when we lost a Hunter and a Canberra, I don't know if that was hit by a SAM 7 or 37 mil or whatever, but that's another story. That was after I'd left the squadron. What we did at night from altitude was a technique called offset bombing. It involved special operatives going to the camp, finding a terrorist camp, and then putting 2 flares out. Initially, they would be there to light the flares themselves, which is highly dangerous. Later, we developed a thing called RAMS, which is remotely activated marker system. And you'd fly with a radio transmitter on your thigh, and you'd initiate with 2 buttons. You'd initiate the flares yourself. The principle was, if you had 2 flares in line with the target, that gave you your lineup, and obviously it worked out with heading and drift. But to get a sighting picture for the navigator on the bomb site, they would pick a point. The aircraft has got to be in a position to get a bomb on the target. So if the aircraft's in the same position, you could take a false aiming point and make a correction to your sighting angle mathematically. That's what we did. The second flare was the false target, and that's what we bombed. We bombed the second flare, but of course the bomb would actually go across and hit the target. I hope that makes sense. It worked. And we did a lot of operations with this offset technique. And hats off to the guys on the ground. They did a wonderful job. And it had to be so accurate, their grid reference and things like that. And they were operating off photographs as well. And, they put the flares where they could.
Greg, one of the more memorable bombing raids was the attack on the ZIPRA base just outside Lusaka, which became known as the Green Leader attack. And that was just an airborne attack. There were no ground troops involved. Ground troops came in later on other targets. But just talk us through the actual, what you remember of that actual that raid.
That was Freedom Camp, FC Camp on Westlands Farm.
Yeah,
it was about 5 k's or miles northeast of Lusaka.
Yeah,
and we'd actually discovered it by photo Recce, and I think there'd also been operatives observing it, and smirching around
on the ground.
Yeah. This actually was in retaliation for the first Viscount that was shot down, the Anyani. I think it was Victor Papa Whiskey Alpha Sierra with John Hood and Garth Beaumont and 52 passengers on board it. And they had taken off from Kariba and were climbing out when it was hit by a SAM-7 in the inner starboard engine. And that burst into flames and put the outer engine out of action as well. And these guys did a wonderful job in force landing this aircraft because it wasn't going anywhere on 2 engines and on fire. And he tried to put it down in a field. I think it was a cotton field or something like that. But it wasn't long enough, and also it had a ditch across the front, across the middle of it. And although he landed it all right, as soon as the nose wheel hit that ditch, well, the aircraft just cartwheeled and broke apart and things like that. And most of the people were killed. But there were 18 survivors, and some of them were badly injured. And people got out of the aircraft and passing babies through broken bits of fuselage and things like that. I mean, it's a well-known story. But the other thing is, of course, that 8 of them went looking for help. And while they were away, another terrorist group came across the survivors and massacred the remaining 10, which was not, it didn't do very much good for our morale or anything like that. And the annoying and aggravating thing about it was Joshua and Kama bragging about it and laughing. It really upset. So I think it's a political decision to retaliate for this. And that's when the raid on FC came about.
What was the sort of plan of attack from the air? How was it structured?
Involved were four Canberras, 7 or 8 hunters. The story was, we got airborne from Surham, we headed up to high level, we headed up to Mana Pools, and the hunters, I think they got airborne from Filey or maybe Thornhill. We met up with our section, blue section, 4 hunters, and the other 2 hunters, Alpha Wild and Jim Stagman, were orbiting Mumbai airfield. Or later on they got to orbit there. And then we had another pair of hunters for restrike and reserve, also airborne in the area, and the command deck, of course. When we got to Mana Pools, we were down to low level, and the hunters were with us, and they were carrying 1,000-pound bombs and also these golf bombs, and they were airburst bombs. And the story was that we flew north to Mana and then to go and then turned west, thereby flying around the Air Force base of Mumbai and attacking in the direction we wanted. And these guys were supposed to be on the parade ground at 8 or 8:30 or whatever it was in the morning, all out there doing the marching or whatever, or roll call, we don't know. And at the IP, the hunters would accelerate and climb up because they had to get up to about 10,000 feet. And they would turn in at 90 degrees to our attack and mark for us. So there's 4 hunters going down there and dropping these golf bombs and 1,000-pounders. And we were literally there within 30 seconds, 40 seconds afterwards with the cameras. And we were 4 of us, as I said earlier, lying abreast, dropping 300 of these Alpha 2s. And we ran through. You can hear the nav on the tape giving Chris Dixon, that Navas Mike Ronnie, left, steady, bombs gone, the usual patter. We ran through and dropped the bombs, and then we came out, obviously started low level back to across Lake Kariba, I think is the way we went back. And the hunters were coming back for a restrike, and then they sent in 4 gunships with 20 mil, and they were picking off targets, and hunters were still in the area to take out more formidable targets. A lot of the gunships had stoppages, which is a bit unfortunate, but a lot of death and destruction occurred on that day, and that raid was the first of 3 that the Canberras did that day, because we also did an attack on Mkuzi and that was SAS we put in on the ground after that, and then we went back to Serum, rearmed, reloaded, refueled, and we did attack on CG2 camp, training camp, and the RLI were involved in that. So it was a lot of effort, a lot of bombs dropped, and I think one of the camps were found to be mostly with women terrorists.
Makushi,
yeah. Makushi. But that was it. But when I got back, probably the next day after the 3 bombing sorties, I was the squadron adjutant, and Chris Dixon asked me he had a tape recorder there recording the whole incident. And I had the tape, I made a copy of it, and I transcribed the pertinent bits from the run-in to climbing out. And I still have what I typed out all those years ago on government paper, recycled paper, is long since faded. As we dropped those bombs, he's saying, "Bombs are fucking beautiful, beautiful. What the F is Greg Todd doing so close?" And at that stage, I was the number 4 extreme starboard. And my nav, Terry Bennett, had been saying to me, go left. Well, this aeroplane next to me is getting a bit bigger. So when he said bomb's gone, I just put it on its side, 300 feet and 350 knots, and I was pulling away. So Chris Dixon was looking at 2 guys next to him, and then this one peeling off into the distance. Yeah. I said to him, when he got back, "Can I take that bit out of the tape?" "No, you bloody can't." Yeah. As I said, three different strikes in one day. It was a good day for us, and I think nothing can bring back those poor buggers on the Viscounts, but I think it boosted morale in Rhodesia.
It certainly did.
We did a Mulungushi attack on the 22nd of December in '78. It was called Op Pygmy, and this is a big camp to the north of this Lake Mulungushi, and the first attack we did, I was with Doug Paget as my nav bomb aimer, and stupidly it was done at 300 feet with these alpha bombs again. And when we ran in, we could see the guns firing at us, or he could more so than I. But we put in a strike. I think there was, I don't know how many Canberras were on it. They decided, we ran through and all this stuff bursting around us. A bit unsettling, to say the least. Anyway, nobody got hit, and we went back, rearmed, and then went back there with 1,000-pounders in the afternoon just to make their day for them. But later we did this op liquid, again one of these smash things, because we had 4 South African Canberras with us as well. And it was a night attack, and it was this offset technique that I described. The South African Canberras had come up to Rhodesia, and they were actually based at Filey, outside Hartley, to keep them out of sight of most prying eyes. And we'd take off from Salisbury, and we'd marry up with them, and off we'd set. And then we'd split. We'd put 2 of our Canberras, Chris Dixon and Ted Brent, and 2 of theirs. And that was green section. And then amber section was Ted Brent and myself and 2 of their Canberras. But also on the front wave with Chris Dixon, the green section, we're 2 hunters with 1,000-pounders. Now the hunter is designed to drop a 1,000-pounder in a 65-degree dive. So that's not going to happen in the middle of the night. And the plan was, we were doing this offset bombing, and the nav would count down. And when he said tit depressed, i.e. bombs gone, when he said tit depressed, the hunters would just release their bombs in level flight, so the whole lot would go down. So there was quite a few bombs going down the first wave. What, 6, 24, 32 bombs, 1,000-pounders supposed to come out of the first wave. Well, and then Amber section, our lot, were about a minute behind. And when Chris was running in, he was trying to initiate the RAMS, the remote activated marker system, and nothing was coming up. And apparently, as we found out later, I think it was Shuli, I'm not sure, had been unable to put the markers in and unable to contact anyone to advise, fall off. So Chris ran in, I think we were about 16 or 18,000 feet. He couldn't see anything. And then he said, well, we've overflown the target. Well, we couldn't have told him that because now all of the shit was coming up from the ground. All this bloody tracer and ack, and it was like a firework display ahead of us. So Ted Brent quickly said to everyone, put on your proper bombing angle, and we'll bomb the muzzle flashes, which is what we did. So Amber section went in, dropped all our bombs, and we peeled off. But then the game was on for Green section because they were trying to wheel a big balbo of 4 cameras and 2 hunters each side at night in the pitch black. And somebody said that they'd actually blacked out the bottom of the nav lights so that they couldn't be seen from the ground. Whether that's true or not, I'm not too sure, because if you went below, you'd lose sight of the airplane. So it made flying very, very difficult. And blokes were peeling off and getting lost. And they did a racetrack and came in. Now with all this extra flying, the hunters were getting low on fuel. And Vic Whiteman, I think, was leading them. And he said, well, just go in there and throw your bombs where you think you should. And that caused a bit of concern for the Norman Walsh and the guys on the command deck, because Shully and his guys were still around there. But apparently they were well out or well to the left. We had established that. So it wasn't the best bombing raid that we ever covered. You didn't cover ourselves in glory. But we did hit the target. And then we went back the next day in the morning and did Liquid 2, which obviously now is a daylight raid, didn't need offset bombing. Once again with the South Africans, and I think John's got a recording of that as well, also from my aircraft. I don't know, maybe you'll just put in the pertinent points. But there's my navigator. After we've done the bombing, again, we were under severe fire, and there's on a recording you can hear hunters saying they think they've been hit, but they don't know where. But Paul now come out the nose, and he's holding up a photograph and saying, this is where our bombs went, dang, sort of thing. And then, as a pilot of the camera, you couldn't see where your bombs had gone. Mm-hmm. But once you'd flown out, and I managed to pull up and look over the wing, I could see, and there were still other bombs coming down. And a lot of them, unfortunately, dropped short in the water.
Greg, the South African pilots, you didn't really get to know them. You just met up in the air. They came in and...
That's right. The only Chris Dixon and Mike Ronnie had flown down to Filey with maps and briefing maps and photos for these South African guys. But I mean, I was flying next to 2 cans and I didn't know who the guys were. It's interesting because many years later, my wife and I were down here in Somerset West, and we were between lets of our house, so we were jacking it up, and the estate agent came round with a bloke and to show him the house, and did you want to rent it? And he said he's also a pilot. I said, oh, interesting. Well, who do you fly for? SA Air. Well, I fly for the Dubai Airwing. What do you fly? Oh, A340s. Oh, I fly 747s. Oh, right. Were you in the Air Force? Yeah, I was in the Rhodesian Air Force. He was in the SAF. I said, what did you fly in the SAF? It was Harvards and working up to Canberras. I said, well, I did Provis, Vampires, Alouettes and Canberras. I said, when did you fly your Canberras? He said, anyway, 1978. I said, I was on Canberras then. Did you do any combined raids with Rhodesian Air Force? Yes, I did 2 or 3. I said, you did them with me. I mean, this guy's name is Pete Ace. He rented my place for about 10 months after that. But I mean, there's, I don't know, 55 million people in South Africa. And I've got to meet the bloke that may have been my wingman.
Incredible. Yeah, what a story. Yeah.
We then, 2017 we went up to 12 Squadron, which is the South African campers, and they had a reunion, and they invited us guys, roadies from 5 Squadron, Rhodesian Air Force, and I met a lot of the guys who were, you know, all those years later.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Pete Ace wasn't there. But that's, you know, what an absolute coincidence. You know.
Greg, just talk a bit about these long-range reconnaissance flights where you were pushing your range, with fuel and stuff. And what were the instructions in the event that something went wrong and you weren't going to make it back to Rhodesia?
Well, this is again involving the South African Air Force. Our aircraft, our cameras, you know, you sat on a survival pack, and as part of your ejector seat. So when you went out, you'd come down, the seat would separate, but you'd still have your survival pack under your bum. You'd land, and then you had something to start life with. There's rations in there and stuff, but it was land-based. And the operation, the story I'm about to tell you, required dinghies and Mae Wests. So we repacked our survival packs. In fact, we actually had South African Air Force survival packs complete, and they just replaced them in our aircraft, in our ejector seats. And we had, we wore uniform overalls with all rank and wings and all taken off, and any identification features removed. And we had the South African search and rescue beacons.
Where were you off to?
We were going to go north, and I can't remember. It was extreme north. I'm not.
Mozambique.
Nakala. I'm sure it was Tanzania, but I've looked at the maps. It's so long ago, I can't remember the place.
Mm-hmm.
It may have been Nakala, but the object was because there. It must have been Tanzania, because they had these SAM-2s. It was like a great big telegraph pole, and they could reach our Recce height. Anyway, the story was, we went there looking for stuff being offloaded from docks, and there were T-54, 55 or 56 tanks being offloaded, and we got the photographs. But the story was that, you know, if you were shot down or anything like that, but any trouble, well, you just head east over the coast, out to sea, and eject. And then you would get in your nice dinghy supplied by the SAF and get out your search and rescue beacon and start chirping. And a submarine will come up beside you and rescue you. yeah, we believe this like heck. No, you know, one-way ticket. But apparently it was true, because I met somebody from the South African Navy years later, and he said he was on the submarine there. And as we know, the SAS used this, had the help of those submarines when they did raids on the Puta and Baira and things like that. Mm. So there was a lot of cooperation there. Mm. But you know, there's a lot of disbelief in my camp.
But a long way home, from jumping into the sea off the Tanzanian coast.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Okay, so well, there's a couple of photographs, which hopefully John will supply.
Yeah.
The one, I'd been doing some photo recce with my dad, Paddy Morgan, up by Big Falls on the border, obviously looking for camps and things like that. And we had to go and refuel at Vic Falls. But as we were approaching Vic Falls, a Rhodesian Viscount had taken off and was heading back to probably Wankie or Salisbury, I don't know. Anyway, we overflew him at about 500 feet, and he didn't know we were there. And we used our cameras and we took a wonderful photograph of a Viscount, which I've got the original photograph still.
Fantastic.
It's absolutely. You can see the writing. You can see the registration. Victor Papa, Yankee, November, India. And later in life, I actually flew that aeroplane when I joined then Air Zimbabwe after the Air Force.
Greg, then you went on to transports, and you were involved in resupplying the SAS in Mozambique in support of Renamo, Gorongosa, and that's where you were right at when the hostilities ended.
Yeah, I was on 3 Squadron for about 10 months, and I did a lot of, it was basically resupplying different places and crew changeovers and things like that. And obviously Fire Force duties, in support of the troops. But this Gorongosa thing, I probably did about 6 or 7 resupplies to Gorongosa with the decks. And Gorongosa was a big mountain halfway across Mozambique, and we initially fly out and drop the SAS by DAC, and weeks or months later they'd be recovered by helicopter. But during that time, we would resupply them with arms and food and things like that, and we'd throw them out on static lines with crushed pallets, to dampen the thud when it landed. We'd fly in, and the guys from I can't remember which unit it was, but they were the people responsible for packing up the pallets and flight dispatchers or something like that, and they would physically shove it out the side of the deck, and it would go from static line and land. But the thing was, Gorongosa was a big hill, so you had to get it right to land on top, because if you went too early, you'd get thud into the side of the hill, and I think maybe the bad guys could get it, or if they didn't, there wasn't much left of the pallet like that. And likewise, again, if you overshot, it would go on the other side. So it had to be fairly accurate, and we mainly succeeded. But when the British monitoring force came, all hostilities supposedly had finished. But we were still doing Renama. What it would happen was they were doing it now with C-130s with the SAF, and they would come up to Filey. Now, on the first sortie, I was sent down to fly with these guys as an observer and the man with the local knowledge, as it were. And off we. Now these C-130s, obviously, they had the ramp down the back, and they just lower the ramp and push much bigger pallets out. I mean, they could take far more than a deck. Anyway, we got there. And, obviously they did their own navigation, and I was able to say, well, that's the place, and this is where. This is the best running direction. It's all pre-planned anyway. Basically, there's a dog's body. And we're going around in an orbit, one each side, and throwing these pallets out. And I think they had some sort of system, and I stand to be corrected, but I think they flew with a notch of flap. And they had either dumped the flap or pull another notch, or to change the body of the angle of the aircraft to assist the guys shoving the pallet out the back. And I'd watched this, and there was 10 pallets on board, and I wanted to go and see what was happening, how they operated on the roller bed. So I stepped out the flight deck onto the roller bed to see, and at that time it was the last pallet, and they had aborted the drop. So they went around, but they still had the pallet on board. But now, whatever the reason was, the pallet was now travelling the opposite way to what it was supposed to go, with these guys pushing, about 4 of them, trying to stop this pallet. And there was battling to stop it. And the chances are that it would have come all the way back to the bulkhead. And it was lucky I was there, because I just saw they had all these wooden chocks or wedges. And I managed to grab one and stick it underneath the aluminium pallet at the bottom and stop it. So the guys were a bit relieved that happened. Anyway, that was about the only incident. They were getting shot at, but they didn't know it most of the time. And that was basically, after that I resigned, and I'd got my commercial pilot's license and airline transport pilot's license, and as it was changing from Rhodesia to Zimbabwe, I didn't want to fly for the Zimbabwe Air Force, and my 10 years coincided with the elections and things like that. So once I'd resigned, my friend Bob Dotman took great delight in sending me to the forward airfields as a forward airfield commander, which was like, it was all deserted, You had a pub there, tumbleweeds blowing around the revetments, no aircraft, nothing. So I spent the pub funds every night. Every night was a sixpence night or whatever. So, and at that stage we had assembly areas next to us. So the guys who were our enemies, they would come into our pub and drink at night, and very interesting.
Different time.
Yeah.
Greg, then you flew for Air Zimbabwe.
I then got out of the Air Force and got into Air Zimbabwe, and I flew Viscounts, 707s, and finally 737s with them for about 7 years. And during that time, I got my British airline transport pilot's license. And in '87, we emigrated to England, and I joined a company called Air Europe, flying 737 3 and 400s out of Gatwick. And that was going well. I got a command in about 18 months, and we were putting ourselves up by our bootstraps, because I'd gone there with 160 pounds, with nothing. And I got there halfway through the month, and they didn't pay me half salary at the end of the month, but I got a month and a half salary at the end of 6 weeks. But in the meantime, I had to pay rent and things like that. It was interesting, anyway. But with the first Gulf War, I was actually on leave in Zimbabwe when my wife phoned me to say Europe's gone into liquidation. And what had actually happened was that with the first Gulf War, people were scared to fly because of bombs on aeroplanes, hijacks, or being shot down or whatever. And that's when they started phone conferencing. And as you've seen now with COVID, it's developed into Zoom and things like that. But anyway, that was the end of that airline. By the time I got back from Zim, did my logbooks, sorted out CVs, sent them out. We lost 950 pilots, and there's probably about 50 jobs in Dan Air and the other airlines around. You had guys from Aussie who were trimming lawns with trimmers for the council.
Pilots.
Yeah, pilots. Yeah. I was lucky. I found out there was not going to be a job in Rhodesia, and I advertised in Flight Magazine and things like that. And I got selected to join a company called Air Hong Kong, which is flying 747 freighters out of Hong Kong. Now, if you remember the film Top Gun with Maverick, the character, he got bollocked by his instructor on stage. He says, if you carry on flying like that, you'll end up flying plastic dog shit out of Hong Kong. Hello. That's what I ended up doing for 5 years on 747 100 freighters. But it gave me the background for my last job, which was flying for the ruler of Dubai in the Dubai Irving, the Royal Flight. And that was VVIP, gold taps and things like that for 13 years, and I was very grateful for that. And that's the end of my flight career. 10 years of military and 30 years of city, in a nutshell.
Interesting stuff. Well, thanks, Greg.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Very interesting.